And we're live. Welcome,
There it
Punya, to
is.
Parasocial, the people behind the protocols.
Thank you for having me. Great name. Very Gen Z and relevant.
Oh gosh, I don't know if that we were trying to be Gen Z, but love it. Thank you for coming on. We've been big fans of Stellar and you for a long time at this point, so I'm excited to um, bring you on this platform and have you share a little bit more about what you do and about the Stellar ecosystems. Maybe to kick it off, let's start with intros. What's your role and what do you focus on at Stellar?
Definitely. I'm like a DeFi lifer, and I'm still doing that at Stellar. I'm on the business development team, really focused on DeFi. Yeah, we have a relatively new DeFi ecosystem, so a lot of my roles and responsibilities are on like making sure we have primitive parity and really scaling our ecosystem.
And what does the DeFi roadmap look like for this quarter and next quarter? I'm curious how that's evolved over time.
I think for us, last year was really about making sure that we're working with the right partners, such that anything somebody can do in the Ethereum ecosystem or the Solana ecosystem, they could do on Stellar. And so I think by the end of last year, we had those partnerships like inked or signed, or so to speak. And so this year, what it becomes about is like getting them to launch, and then also getting like capital flow and scaling the net liquidity within the ecosystem. So I think the next 2 quarters, we've already had quite a few launch already. A lot of our really like brand name DeFi partnerships are going to be launching Q2, or sorry, Q3, Q4. And some of the vault programs that we have already like launched, like the one with like Gammy and Utila, are going to be scaling further. Um, and that's going to be the name of the game, making sure like the remaining protocols that are super critical launch, and then making sure vault curators and other capital is like sufficient flowing through them.
That makes sense. And one thing I'm curious about on the vault side, are you finding that more institutions are leveraging vaults as part of kind of their setup on Stellar, or are you finding that one thing that we see a lot is like fintechs are also interested in vaults as kind of like the backdoor way to kind of earn yield on idle balances? So like, where are you seeing vaults being leveraged in the current kind of DeFi landscape in Stellar?
Honestly, I feel like we're speedrunning just like normal capital markets and financial
Okay.
economy history. Like you start off with people interacting with like, a bank by themselves or what have you, and then you have these asset managers come in to like facilitate the process, make it super easy. And I really view vaults and the people that manage them just to be the asset manager equivalent in like a DeFi context. So truly relevant from anyone that wants to consume the end DeFi resource, so to speak. So everybody from like fintechs, just make it super easy for them to plug into and have like the yield strategy managed by somebody, as well as institutions. I think from the institutional perspective, more so what we see, or what I see, is that vaults are just a balance sheet that can buy their asset, their money market fund, or their tokenized bond ETF, or what have you.
Got it. Um, for the listeners and for kind of potential partners, Stellar has been ahead of payments and like into payments long before I think anyone else um, was excited by that. And given that we're so deep into Genius, potentially Clarity, stablecoins being adopted by fintechs, um, why do you think a payments ecosystem needs a healthy DeFi ecosystem? And how are you thinking about that in your day to day?
Yeah, one piece of sort of feedback that a lot of the leadership team at Stellar, is ex Web2 payments, deep backgrounds in PayPal and Plaid and all those things. And I think one thing I've gotten to appreciate is that being able to move money from A to B is kind of like a very small selling point of like a payment service provider or like a orchestrator or what have you. It's really like everything you can do around it. Like, a big one is being able to provide financing for people that use you for payments, because you maybe have a good view into their financial statements and inventory and whatnot. Of course, like the normal like fraud protection, things like that are super important as well. But I think the credit one is super specifically relevant from like a DeFi context, because we want to be a place where we power everyday financial services. I think payments is the most obvious one at the inception of crypto as a technology. It was highlighted in the Satoshi Bitcoin white paper. But really, what happens when you can enable money to move from point A to point B, you got to start thinking about what are the other value added services you can add on top of it. And then it also becomes a bit of a moat. Like once you have really good underwriting, really good liquidity to service that originated asset, then you just become the natural place where people want to power their entire financial stack.
And do you find that you need to translate that composability and that thesis to the teams you're working with and the institutions you're working with? Like, do you have to kind of retrofit a lot of that to like maybe their compliance setup or their product setup?
Yeah, I think that specifically is a bit of like a vision statement that doesn't resonate quite yet as much commercially. I think it's like where we see the puck skating as opposed to where it is right now. I think, frankly, right now, a big part of our pitch is really making it clear how they can increase their top line by utilizing crypto. Everyone is, I think, like crypto curious, and they sort of get what's going on, and their engineering teams have done some basic diligence. I think the question tends to be like a business one in terms of like, okay, what can actually do? And I think that's probably not talked about enough, maybe just like in the content that they consume. So really elucidating how they can monetize their float if they're like a payments business, how they could offer like other financial services and capture a spread on that. If they have like yield accounts, I think elucidating that story, maybe a product relevant one, is the most important.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what this is like, I'm personally just very curious about this based on your experience. But what's been the most exciting kind of DeFi partnership you've worked on this year, and why?
I think from a DeFi perspective, for a payments ecosystem, the most important one is really lending and credit and making sure you have like a robust way by which people can access a loan. And then on the flip side, access a yield source. I think that tends to be like just, the first question we get from an asset issuer, from like a fintech partner or what have you. And so we can't quite disclose the name yet, but we've signed a partnership with like a top three lending protocol. It's going to be going live Q4 of this year. I think what it does, it's really going to put our ecosystem on the map. It's going to surprise a lot of people. Can't wait to talk about that.
Interesting. Awesome. It's funny, like a lot of the fintechs that we're chatting with, Stellar is actually like top of the list in terms of the networks that they want to work with. And I think it's because you've done such a good job of building out that surrounding ecosystem of not only the payment side, but also the supporting kind of financial tools and the DeFi tools on top of it. So very, very
Hmm.
exciting. We'll definitely stay tuned there. What is, it sounds like you've kind of been involved in a lot of these partnership discussions with these DeFi teams and have obviously been working at the foundation for a while. What are the pieces of these conversations that you're having that take a little longer than you anticipate in converting an opportunity into something pen on paper?
I think like yeah, there's maybe like the build process and like the go to market process, and I think the build process more or less tends to go pretty smooth. Maybe gets delayed by like a week or two or something. But then there's this like entire engine of like matchmaking people. People have like visions as to who they want as their partners to go live with or whatever, and I think that part always ends up taking longer than people expect. People have different tech stacks, commercial priorities change. So I think something we're trying to do a bit more is facilitate those conversations earlier on, make it a bit more self-serve, reduce the foundation as like a choke point. That's always where things get caught up. Is like that last mile problem, just that you see everywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious on you mentioned this on the liquidity piece where like a lot of the DeFi ecosystem is actually leveraged to kind of give the payments ecosystem a lot more circulation and just a lot more activity. Has
100%.
that been is that something that you've been like working on the partnership side? Is that mostly like an on-ramp and like partner question? Is there like product that actually needs to get built out to formalize that? What does that look like?
There's a bit of a product perspective there, but I think because our like core blockchain has been live long enough that I think our tech stack is fairly mature. It ends up being entirely like mostly like a commercial and financial question. We have been getting these requests more and more from fintechs to provide, settlement financing, what have you, from when they on and off ramp, for example, the stablecoin. And we were early partners with like Huma and ARF that have done some great work here. Um, but yeah, I think it specifically ends up being like, okay, new fintech, how do they get underwritten? How are they able to tap DeFi? What wallet infra do they use to be able to access that line of credit? Or the legal docs as it pertains to their jurisdiction? Is that jurisdiction even supported? I think that tends to be where the conversation
Yeah.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's rare to see a chain ecosystem that's been live for 10 years with the amount of commercial partnerships that you guys have. I think that's like the one thing that is always in my mind about Stellar as someone
Mm.
that's worked in the Ethereum space for so long. Like I
Same.
remember in 2017 when I was out of the New York office at Consensus, Stellar was the only other company in New York that was building in crypto. And so it's just cool to see how you guys have thought about it so far.
It's hilarious.
One
Yeah.
thing, yeah, one thing that I referenced as I was prepping for this episode is the DTCC announcing Stellar as the first chain for DTC custodied securities, and that being a big headline this year. What does that actually mean? Is that coming soon? Is that going live immediately? And yeah, where exactly in the stack is Stellar sitting in that?
Yeah, it's a super interesting partnership. What I find so fascinating about it is really the juxtaposition with enthusiasm about crypto as like a foundational tech layer between like institution and fintech partners versus like the broader crypto industry as a whole. A lot of crypto just feels super bearish about what we can offer as like an industry, but like you see this incredible enthusiasm on the other side, which is hilarious. Um, in specifically the DTCC case, uh, they will be going live in 2027. I believe in Q2 is like the date that
Okay.
we have committed publicly. And what we're going to be going live with is just like a full stack tokenization engine for anything that DTCC already custodies, which is everything on the biggest stock market in the world, the American stock market. So it's a super meaningful partnership, and I think Stellar is going to be the first open permissionless network on which they're building on, which means that these tokenized stocks will be readily accessible by like the DeFi ecosystem or broader ecosystem participants. You can imagine like fintech apps in the future being able to offer like really easily ways by which people can buy and sell stocks or borrow against stock portfolios or what have you, which I think expands the portfolio of things that like a fintech can be to maybe a more full stack bank type offering. Um, so I think it's just gonna be like super super powerful.
Mm.
And really, I think what's interesting is that we've had like a lot of growth in tokenized stocks happen, mostly through like these interesting wrappers, like somebody who since sets up like a prospectus in Liechtenstein because they have a license there and they can buy the asset, issue a tokenized version of it.
Mm.
It's always like a claim on a claim. In this case, you have like literally the custodian of the stock issuing something direct on the blockchain, and that's going to be different. So one thing I'm kind of curious about is how does that shake up the competitive landscape?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing that we see with some of our fintech customers is wealth layering with tokenized stocks, where
Mm.
something that comes to mind is like we have a customer called Rampa. They primarily are powering remittances from EU to LATAM. And their whole thing is they want to incentivize deposits into their application and like make sure money kind of stays in their ecosystem. And part of that is like, how cool would it be to, yes, you're sending money to your grandmother in Mexico, but what if grandma can just leave the money in the account and the account is actually
Hmm.
like being DCA'd into some sort of like American asset in the US stock market that's tokenized, like an ETF or something. I think that
Hmm.
I'm curious, is that the kind of like long tail distribution that you're seeing with something like this initiative? Or, yeah, curious if I got that right.
I think on the fintech side, that's almost like the exact story. for whatever reason, I think LATAM and Central America in general, Central and South America, are just like dollarizing super aggressively, and have just like this massive hunger for U.S. financial assets.
Hmm.
So yeah, you kind of really nailed it with that example, specific to like the stock use case. Um, there might be some more interesting things that happen on the more like traditional, like, I don't know, hedge funds or like on-chain funds or high net worth individuals being able to do some interesting things there themselves. But from a fintech perspective, I think that is what we expect to happen too.
Can you share some of those interesting use cases for the hedge funds or the institutions?
A lot of people talk about being able to create like yield-bearing stocks, so being able to borrow against like your Tesla stock position, take those dollars, being able to put it into like a bond ETF issued by Wisdom Tree, and then just collect a spread on that. I think that could be a cool example of just like a capital efficiency stack that might be tougher to run, more expensive to run, or have higher minimums otherwise in TradFi. So that's like I think that's like the sort of uninteresting story people are going to be testing.
Very cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Wisdom Tree as an example. Between Wisdom Tree, Franklin Templeton, Centrifuge, you have a bunch of other partners. They're all kind of tokenizing different things. Are you expecting the use cases to look the same per partner, or are you kind of seeing some separation of how they're actually being applied on Stellar?
It's an interesting question. You know, I you know, my gut instinct here is like I do think there is a really common flavor as to, like what they expect to get out of tokenizing an asset, in the sense of capital efficiency, what we talked about in the stock example, or like just wider distribution in like the fintech case. Um, so I think that is consistent. Maybe what differs is the type of asset class within which they're making that bet. Some people are very bullish on commodities because they think the capital markets for commodities and TradFi are just like structurally inefficient in ways blockchain improves.
Interesting.
Others are maybe a bit more vanilla in how they view like crypto rails as a distribution channel just for traditional money market funds and credit assets. Um, yeah, but there's kind of that like underweaving thread there between all of them.
That makes sense. And do you have a sense of what these partners are interested in with Stellar? Is it the broader payments ecosystem and the focus that you guys have, or like what typically resonates? I have a few ideas from the fintech perspective on like what we see our customers get excited about, but what are the institutions excited about in terms of Stellar specifically?
I think focus was a good setup because I think that's it. I think for like the past 10 plus years, we've really focused on one thing really, which is just powering everyday financial services. We never got caught up in like the meme coin wave. We never went too deep on,
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
yeah, like all these trends that happened. I think like what was that one thing where they tokens were incentivizing the deployment of like physical hardware or whatever.
Oh, Deepin,
This
Deepin.
DeepIn was a huge wave. You had stuff on decentralized data models with like AI. Like crypto's had
So
fads
many.
come in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's been some short-term benefits on wanting to capitalize on top of them. Like I think Solana really made its name from like meme coins. I think there's consequences of that too. Perhaps on the reputation layer, like relationship you can have with like key policy folks on like DC or something. So I think Stellar, it was in a position to not need to follow those fads. It chose not to. It chose to just really focus on what it viewed as the future, and I think that's just create like a branding and a network and just a posture that I think is like super attractive to people that are realizing this industry is like mega serious, and so they want to work with another serious player. So I think focus is like a huge one, and just that the alignment of vision it it brings out.
How did you guys maintain that focus? Because that is a very good point that I guess Stellar never really branched out into any of these like sub trends, and you kind of stayed the course. Was there something cultural, I guess, at the company that drove this, or how did you guys stay the course? Because now that you mention it, that's very true that there really isn't any sort of deep in activity. It's kind of always been payments.
Yeah, I think it's probably got to be just two things. I think one, the leadership that we've had at the foundation, it's probably a bit more like senior that you see at other foundations. It's like, it's less so like young hackers building, it's more so seasoned executives coming in to technology they view as the future. So I think our CEO, her background like Yahoo, Mozilla, and just like across the leadership team, I think they just had a firmer view of where things were going and were willing to stay the course. And then also, I think that we just got lucky with a couple good commercial ones that just validated us along the way, like with MoneyGram and
Yes.
Franklin Templeton are probably like the marquee ones, right? Like they just like, okay, it seems like people are actually interested in doing things in the way that we see it. So let's double down.
Mm. Um, One, I call it a trend because I think the volume with agentic payments right now is really small, but that does feel like a trend. It's very hot right now, but it does feel like a broader payments trend. Is
Mm.
there an agentic payment strategy at Stellar Foundation or at Stellar more broadly? Like, how do you guys see that fitting in? Because I do think that's part and parcel of payments and microtransactions, but again, volumes today definitely on the lower side.
I think it's a space that we're actually actively watching and formulating a perspective on and a strategy to execute against. Um, it is probably like the most ripe, exciting area up to debate to see who wins it. So it's
Mhm.
like super important for us to keep a tab on. I think like the playbook for onboarding fintechs now, it's like a payments product is somewhat consistent, commodified, competitive. I think how this looks like from the agent's perspective is still a market that can be won. So I think we're super tapped into what's going on there. I wish I had like a cleaner perspective on it on this agents thing, um, but I don't quite yet. I don't know.
Yes.
Have you seen? Oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead. Please tell me.
I'd be curious. You're probably more tapped into like this agentic payments thing than I am. Are there like people or foundations that have communicated a strategy that you thought were like compelling or charismatic?
Yeah, I think a lot of different teams are trying to centralize uh at the X402 level. So there's obviously
Mm.
X402, there's at the protocol level, right? So X402, there's MPP, there's a few different versions of this that I've seen in the market. There's obviously like uh, Visa Agent Protocol. There's a few others. They're all kind of trying to own that protocol layer, but
Mm.
I think everyone agrees that, especially with AI today, everybody's trying to become the platform of record, and so it's it's so much more valuable to just pay per scrape instead of paying for random subscriptions for long amounts of time. And so I think like
Mhm.
there is something here um, with payments, and we definitely find that the large FIs all do have people owning agentic payments. Again, in what context is a bit of a question mark. Um,
Mm.
but I see more people trying to centralize at the protocol layer. So like, yes, X402 is Coinbase's, but like, what's our take on that?
Hmm. No, I see. Yeah, I think when it comes to the standards, we try to work with whichever ones are the most like open. I guess we have a bet that like open software here wins. I wonder how important like security is like a value add will be for agentic payments. Like yeah, just being able to offer infra that maybe like ensures an agent or is able to make sure the agent is more higher fidelity to the wishes of the end human. I don't know though.
Yeah, we have a permissioning system on top of agent wallets that helps. So you can have it's default deny, and you can just have rules for how transactions are being executed at the agent level, and then also introduce like human controls, like let's say 2FA that requires Face ID if a transaction is above a certain limit. But again,
Hmm.
like I have to say that the volumes we're seeing related to our agentic payments and finance customers is way, way, way lower than I think what we're seeing with, remittance or these other kind of established uh,
Right.
kinds of businesses. So yeah, so it's an interesting area that we're certainly watching. But it's cool to hear that you guys are kind of forming your strategy on it.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, One question that comes to mind on security and guardrails is um, what's the position on wallets at the foundation, and how does that come up with DeFi teams and payments teams? We certainly spend all of our day talking about this internally at Para, but
Hmm.
I imagine it comes up on your side as well. So very curious.
You know what really opened my eyes into the importance of wallets? I was attending this conference. I think it was like the FinTech NerdCon or something. Have you heard of that one? It's like that.
Yeah, Miami.
That's right. Yeah, that was the one. And I was there, and there was just like a phenomenal presence by wallet and wallet infra companies. Not so much by like chains. I think us, Tempo, and Monad were basically the only ones there. And just when I was talking to like these fintech guys, one for the most part, they didn't really seem to know what Stellar was. They asked if it was just like a stable coin. They didn't really understand the distinction between like a stable coin and like an L1 or underlying blockchain or what have you. They didn't really seem to give a shit or know about any of that. They
Hmm.
did know about like these wallet providers, and I got the sense that actually it was wallets and people at this infra layer that were probably the first touch point for a lot of these fintechs that were interested in exploring um, crypto as a solution product. So that was kind of eye opening, and I think it was like maybe like a month after that we started talking, and so it was pretty opportunely timed. I think working with wallets and having like a very clean crypto in a box solution is going to be just like critical. Um, so yeah, I think in many ways you guys own the end customer, end fintech, end user, however you want to say it, relationship.
Hmm. It's interesting. When we talk to fintechs, it's like they have an opinion on the chain side. Maybe it's because
Hmm.
maybe we're higher in the funnel, but usually they do have some like loose opinion on chain
Interesting.
ecosystems. Yeah, and usually it's some mix of EVM and Stellar or whatever. There's like usually two chain ecosystems that they're excited by.
Hmm.
And it's a question of like, okay, how do you guys fit into these chain ecosystems? What does their like liquidity look like? What does their kind of supporting ecosystem look like? And so, yeah, obviously that was very important to us to work with chain ecosystems that were like-minded and also had that supporting infrastructure. Um, I think with other ecosystems, it's challenging, or maybe there's not the right support system in place, and so it's hard to kind of pass off a fintech to someone that maybe that there isn't really a proper contact at, things like that.
Have you noticed like a difference in education based on geography, like our fintechs in LATAM just smarter when it comes to crypto versus like the US or Asia or something?
Yeah, so fintechs in LATAM are pro stable coins because they do want to hold US denominated assets. So holding
Right.
USDC, USDT is like money. They do want to do that. What's interesting is Africa is African fintechs are way bigger on
Hmm.
USDT, and Tron. So that's a difference we see there. And then in the Indian
Right.
market, what we're finding is that there's legislation in the Indian market where anytime you receive crypto, you need to receive it in INR. And so the the off-ramp needs to
Interesting.
happen before it hits the receiving wallet. And so there's always like different opinions of stacks based on some of these like intricacies in the market. But yeah, there are differences, and I would say like LATAM, the sell for stablecoins is like way less because people kind of
Hmm.
immediately.
They get it, they know about it. Yeah, fascinating. I don't have too many data points here, but I think my experience, at least on like the LATAM side, I feel like
Mm.
whenever I talk to fintechs there, they're like way more commercially savvy, I suppose, in terms of what they want. Probably to your point, because they just know about stablecoins and want it off the jump.
And they
Interesting.
kind of see it as TAM expansions. They're like, oh, great, I can offer like yield on top of this. I can offer a stablecoin card off of this. Like it's like a way to extend the relationship with the user versus I think in the US it's like, oh yeah, this is an efficient like this gives us efficiency gains and
Hmm.
but everything else around payments and ACH and things like that is like relatively easy actually.
Yeah. Um, Something we're trying to figure out when it comes to working with these fintechs and specifically in the payments layer is really like FX. I think like there's a lot of reasons why structurally there should be FX on chain. That hasn't happened yet, and
Hmm.
I don't know. Like some of the fintechs we work with, like they are in certain geographies where stablecoin liquidity like will run out because there's just such large like buying demand, and um,
Oh, interesting.
there's like yeah, and I don't know. I think like where FX fits into all of this, if it ever belongs on chain or when, that's like a it's like a question at the foundation level, like especially the product team is going super deep into, and we're trying to formulate an opinion against.
Very cool. Yeah, I could see it. I could see obviously stablecoins being useful for that, but the liquidity point is really interesting because yeah, what happens in that scenario where like there's so much demand for one thing and maybe you run
Yeah,
out.
you run
Yeah,
out.
very cool. Um, on that note, I am curious for any fintech and payments teams or DeFi teams that are thinking about Stellar and like choosing the right chain to deploy on, what's the one question that you think they should be asking themselves when making this decision that might be forgotten about or might not be considered?
I think at this point, a lot of like the tech side of things are become pretty much a parity with each other. Like I don't think there's a massive performance difference between Stellar or maybe Ethereum mainnet is decision wise a bit slow, but like call it Arbitrum or something. Um, I think it's almost more like a traditional SaaS relationship where I think things like customer service matter. Like Stellar as an ecosystem invests a ton in having like forward deployed engineers, really white glove service for asset
Mm,
issuers, making sure like the our docs are really well structured and if you have any Rust devs on your team, you'll be able to get it super easily. So we invest a lot into that, and our team comes from that background. Um, I mean, I think things like that and just like roadmap alignment as it pertains to the vision is also key. Like when you are starting to build like really critical business processes on chain, if you have gas costs spike up because there's like a new meme coin or something, I think it's like
it's tough, yeah.
a
Hmm.
meaningful difference, something to consider. So I think a lot of these, a lot of this like commercial process is going to begin to resemble a lot more traditional SaaS like vendor relationships, and that is at least a commercial muscle that at the foundation we're trying to get better at and exercising. I
Hmm.
wonder if we're the first blockchain with forward deployed engineers. That'd be fun.
I
I
was
don't know if we are.
I was gonna say I actually think you guys are because you're also the one foundation team that uses Pylon.
Oh,
Like you guys
really?
have
Okay.
release notes. Yeah, you
Uh,
guys are one of the few that just do it that use it for release notes. We use it too for release notes, but I haven't noticed other foundations leveraging Pylon.
oh, it's
Yeah.
hilarious. We're just
Yeah.
super web 2, I suppose. Yeah.
I kind of think that's what is needed now, especially because yeah, like there's no way that you could work with Franklin Templeton and not have those relationships and business processes.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's something we get a lot of positive feedback on, so we just continue investing into.
Yeah. Um, what is what does kind of onboarding one of the partners look like? Does it look like a forward deploy engineer is like making a POC for these partners, or are you kind of embedding into their decision process? Especially on the DeFi side, where there are like crypto native things to consider, like liquidity. Um, what does that generally look like?
Um, I think it's going to be a little bit different based on the partners, certainly. I think, working with a fintech, it's much more important that we have like the right like infra pieces in place that they're like familiar with, already used to, or can easily onboard into. I think on the like the DeFi protocol side, having like a liquidity story and how they can tap into it becomes like majorly critical. I think on the asset issuance side, it's almost around like, hey, are we going to get sent to jail if we build on top of you?
Yeah.
What is like? Am I going to get fired if I choose Stellar? What is sort of like the downside protection look like? Um, so it tends to vary. I think we wanted we do want to have like similar to what you're describing, almost like a forward deployed engineer that can very rapidly help build prototypes and just make the commercial case and like
Hmm.
the tangible case like a lot more clear. Something we're angling towards.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you. I do think, I mean, even for us, it looks really different per customer relationship and commercial relationship. And I think that's, yeah, it's really case by case. Um,
Really natural.
One question here is, of all the partners we spoke about and the ones we didn't, whose use case has just shocked you or surprised you the most, where they leverage Stellar in a way that surprised you and your team, or in a way that your team hadn't pitched?
I think I don't know if I can say the partner, but I can certainly describe the use case. It was pretty interesting. It was like a money services business. I think they process just a lot of like Web2 remittances or like cross-border payments, just generally in that space. They often held float for like sub 1 day. What that meant is that they couldn't use like normal TradFi capital markets to access yield on that because that's typically like a T plus one
Sure.
settlement or whatever. Like you have to have at least
You have
your
to hold,
funds in the
yeah,
money market fund,
right.
at least for a day, yeah. And what he found interesting about crypto is like you have sort of block by block yield accruing. So like the minimum amount of time you actually have to hold something is like what, like a second or 2 seconds, and that
Mm,
is like meaningfully different because money moves so fast. Being able to offer like a block by block yield is actually like a new revenue stream you can tap into that he just like could not before structurally. Um, and so I thought that was pretty fascinating. It's like a story for crypto as the underlying blockchain for real assets. It's like a yield source for why assets on chain are different than assets off chain. Um, yeah, it's
wow.
yeah for even DeFi because DeFi is what like facilitates this like block by block interest payments. So I just thought that was super cool.
And how does that actually work in practice? Is that float being held in stable coins, deposited into a contract? They're able to earn yield, or like, yeah, what, how is that put into practice at a business? Because
Yeah,
that's quite fascinating.
yeah, it's I think we're exploring the implementation on it specifically. I think at an architectural level, the idea would be to have stablecoins deployed into a specific customized like lending pool. And
Okay.
it's important that it's like a lending pool because the lending pool is really what facilitates like the block by block interest payments. Even if you just have like a native tokenized money market fund, it may not. It may still have like interest distributed on like a weekly, daily, or monthly basis or something. So
I
you
didn't
kind of
know
need
that.
that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It can vary quite widely. Um, but the lending protocol is standardized. So like and every borrower on a lending pool, no matter what collateral they put up, needs to pay interest at a block by block basis. So
Okay.
having that lending pool as a sort of the intermediary there would be important. I think the things to figure out is like on ramp on ramping and off ramping. If that still takes like a day, or you may have defeated the
Right.
benefit. Um, so that's like something we have to figure out. I think there's ways around it though. I think we're getting close.
Yeah. Super cool. I didn't actually know. I mean, obviously you think about lending being an immediate thing, but I didn't. Now that you mention it's block by block, that makes a lot of sense. One
Yeah.
thing that reminded me about the on and off ramp fees, it's something that we see as well. Stablecoin cards come up a lot because anything's obviously this is not volume sub $1,000, so slightly different use case, but anything sub $1,000, it actually makes more sense to just eat the card fee and spend instead of off
Hmm.
ramping and then doing something with it. So yeah, I am
Hmm.
very curious to hear how that gets solved over time because yeah, that sounds like a gnarly problem.
Yeah, I wish I had like a more crystallized view into it. I know we have a couple stablecoin cards on our platform. I think Rain is integrated in, like Wirex has their own like stablecoin card. But I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they solve that issue.
Yeah, interesting. Um, what's a thing in the DeFi world, given you've worked in it for so long? What's something that you think the DeFi ecosystem generally agrees on that you think is like the wrong take or a misconstrued worldview?
Um, I think I just, you know, a lot of like the DeFi ecosystem and the DeFi space seems to have this view that it's beneficial for like the validator layer to exist separately from like the user layer, and that it's important to pay a ton in fees to make sure the validator layer is, you know, maximally decentralized or what have you. I think this is actually completely irrelevant where most of the assets you transact with are centrally issued and have like their state of truth outside of the blockchain exist on like a ledger somewhere that they own. Like no matter how decentralized your validator set is, Circle can freeze your assets at any time. And the entire ecosystem seems to agree stablecoins are the future, real assets are the future, yet they burn billions year on year paying these validators. Oftentimes these validators have antagonistic relationships with the users because they'll like sandwich attack, because why not? It's
Right.
like free money that they can do because they're like more efficient actors. And I think it's just like a total, it destroys the user experience. It's incredibly expensive for the foundation and the token holders and what have you, and it leads to like literally zero benefit. I think Stellar has like and this is like I've been an ETH maxi for almost my entire career up until joining Stellar, because I kind of sensed, you know, the space was at a pivot point. Um, I
I
just
think
found it to
rightly
be like a
so.
colossal waste of time.
I think
Yeah,
that was a fair take. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It was not clear to me until literally like 2 years ago. But when it was like, oh shit. And so I think given this reality, uh, I think like, yeah, you either got to roll with it or commit to being fully cyberpunk. I think this in between, we're like cyberpunk, but not really. It's not going to work. It's just a waste of resources.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that comes up a lot in like the privacy world where it's like there's these intermediate kind of cyberpunk, kind of tradfi, and I think you have to either commit in either direction or you're in this no man's land.
Yeah, no man, that's truly.
Yeah. Um, Amazing. In terms of, just to round this out, you hinted at the lending protocol that you're bringing on very soon to Stellar. Are there other apps or DeFi protocols that you're bringing on to Stellar that you're excited about through the end of this year?
I think we'll have, uh, I actually think I can talk about this. We're gonna have like a really good wallets experience with like MetaMask come to Stellar, so you'll have like a wallet you use in any other ecosystem that you can now use on Stellar, and I think that'll go live in like September or so. That's gonna be phenomenal. And I think what I can't talk about quite as much is just like the amount of asset issuers and like asset managers, financial institutions that are going to be launching products in the next 4 to 5 months. That's going to be dope. So we're going to have like a super busy fall. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Amazing. And it's always cool to see all your updates on a weekly basis. You guys are definitely all in and crushing it. So it's been exciting to join the ecosystem recently. Um, Anything you want to leave the listeners with? Any links where people can find you and stay tuned with what you're working on and Stellar more broadly?
Personally, I'm quite active on Twitter, Punya Vision. I think at the Stellar level, we do have our annual conference, which I hope Hera will attend as well
Oh,
in
wait, when is
Lisbon,
that?
October 20th, I want to say.
Oh, in
Yeah,
Lisbon. Okay,
in
that's good to know.
Lisbon.
I'll look this
I
up.
think we'd be doing a bit more like a marketing storm about it
Okay.
soon too. So that's gonna happen. It's gonna be great. Our last year was at Rio and it was a phenomenal experience.
Oh, this
So
is
hopefully,
this Meridian? Is that the same
Meridian.
thing? Oh, Meridian. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
same
Got it.
thing.
Stellar Meridian. Okay, found the website. Cool. It's exciting.
You guys have scum. But yeah,
Yeah.
nothing else. It's been great working with Para. I think you guys are probably the best wallet experience for fintechs building on top of us to date. So thanks for that. Super excited to keep working.
Yeah. Amazing. And very excited about the projects and teams that are onboarding to Stellar. So excited to keep that growing. And thank you so much for joining Parasocial.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Until next time.
All right.